A new season of Bridgerton returns, bringing with it our beloved Lady Whistledown, adored by many, despised by others, and admired by yours truly. And of course, this season we will explore the story of none other than this character, her love story with none other than Colin Bridgerton. The story begins with the start of a new social season in London and the return of the Featherington family to the city, alongside Lady Whistledown, who also comes back with her usual gossip sheet. Colin also returns to the city after several trips around Europe, and this time he seems completely transformed, appearing more handsome and refined, an observation clearly evident to everyone, especially the eligible young ladies of the season. Meanwhile, Francesca Bridgerton is introduced to society for her first season in the marriage market, though she seems less than enthusiastic about the idea. Despite Francesca being undeniably beautiful and refined, this is not enough for Queen Charlotte to name her the diamond of the season. The Featheringtons, on the other hand, have managed to mend their financial situation, with both Prudence and Philippa having married, let's say, respectable gentlemen. Penelope, for her part, is lonelier than ever. She has been rejected by her best friend Eloise after her identity as the controversial author Lady Whistledown was discovered. In her place, she has been supplanted by the most odious member of society, Cressida Cowper, who also constantly makes her life miserable. Meanwhile, Colin does nothing but flaunt himself in front of the single young women, though without any intention of marriage. At one point, he manages to locate Penelope and approaches her to greet her, but his treatment is hostile, and he withdraws after exchanging a couple of words. After that, Penelope meets with her mother and sisters to learn that the next male child born to one of them will be the future Lord Featherington. However, her sisters take it for granted that it will be one of them who gives birth to the heir, believing it impossible for Penelope ever to marry. Her mother seems to think the same, telling her it is a consolation that she will always be there to accompany her. This revelation leads Penelope to conclude that she needs to leave her house, and to do that, she first needs to secure a husband. So, the next morning, she goes to Madame de la Croix and renews her entire wardrobe. Colin, for his part, tries to extract information from Eloise about her estrangement from Penelope, but she refuses to divulge anything. Later, both unexpectedly meet at the modistes. Penelope attempts to apologize to her friend, but Eloise refuses to yield, devastating Penelope completely. That night, Lady Danbury organizes the first ball of the season, which Penelope decides to attend, showcasing her new look and capturing everyone's attention, including Colin's. Her plan begins to bear fruit when two young bachelors approach her seeking conversation, but Penelope responds awkwardly, completely scaring them away. Penelope, meanwhile, heads to the dessert table where she is approached by Lord Devlin, a handsome man who tries to start a polite conversation. However, when Penelope attempts to flee, embarrassed, Cressida steps on the tail of her dress, ripping the fabric. Disappointed, Penelope leaves the ball crying and calls for her carriage. However, before she can leave, she encounters Colin, who had seen her pass by and decided to follow her. Frustrated by everything that happened, Penelope is in no mood to be kind, so she decides to tell him that she overheard him talking about her with his friends last season, saying he would never court her. After leaving Colin speechless, she departs. Angry, she writes a new edition of Lady Whistledown, hoping this will be enough to vent her feelings. The next day, Portia receives a visit from a man who warns her that one of her daughters must have an heir so that they can secure the title, and he hopes this will not turn out to be a farce. Meanwhile, Eloise confronts Cressida about what she did to Penelope, telling her it was cruel to tear her dress. Cressida explains that she has almost no friends, but that with all the competition in the marriage market, it was hard for there to be friendship among the women. On the other hand, Kate suggests to Anthony that they extend their honeymoon to give more responsibilities to Violet as the Viscountess, which they also see as an opportunity to try for an heir, a suggestion Anthony happily accepts. Later that same day, Colin decides to visit Penelope and apologize. She accepts his apology and vents to him, expressing her frustration at not having the confidence he does, So Colin offers to help her find a husband, which she accepts. But just after that, a new edition of Lady Whistledown's Society magazine begins to be distributed. In it, the author discusses Queen Charlotte's lack of interest in naming a diamond this season, and about Colin, how he has returned from his travels a completely different and fake person. Furious, Colin declares that he doesn't care what Lady Whistledown says about him, but he will never forgive what she did to Marina and Eloise. His sister then asks him if he has any idea who the author is, to which he responds that he does not, but that when he finds out, he will make sure her life is ruined. Later, Colin and Penelope meet in the park to start their lessons. Colin then urges her to chat with a group of gentlemen, but she acts clumsily and exaggeratedly, ruining the attempt completely. At the Featherington house, Portia interrogates her daughters about how often they are intimate with their husbands, pressuring them to conceive an heir, and both assure her that they are trying, although their mother remains unconvinced. Colin and Penelope meet again the next day, and he reminds her of how they met when she made him fall off his horse by throwing a handkerchief, and then laughed about it. He explains that, just like she did that day, she should now shed her shyness. He then asks her why she wants a husband, and she tells him that she wants freedom and to feel comfortable in the world. He then asks her what makes her feel relaxed, to which she responds that drinking tea at her house, but her estrangement from Eloise prevents it, and when he asks what happened between them, she avoids the question and leaves. The next day, he invites her to his house, where he insists on giving her dance lessons, asking her to practice with him, speaking to him as if he were a suitor. She tells him that his eyes are an amazing blue, shining more when he is kind. They both look at each other in silence, but are interrupted by Eloise's voice, prompting Penelope to escape and hide in another room. There, she finds Colin's travel diary, which she starts to read, knowing it is wrong, yet unable to resist. A few minutes later, he discovers her and reproaches her angrily for reading his diary. In the process, he drops a candelabrum, cutting his hand. Embarrassed, Penelope helps him bandage the wound, and after another moment of tension and silence, she decides to leave, but as she exits the house, she crosses paths with Eloise, with whom she exchanges a look before departing. Later, as they head to a ball, Eloise reproaches Colin for having invited Penelope to his house and asks him not to abandon her, as she is probably the only thing she has now, but also not to take her to his house. He then tells her that he is helping her find a husband, and she laughs about it, thinking it somewhat inappropriate. At the ball, Penelope again apologizes to Colin for having read the diary, but tells him that she liked the way he writes and hopes to be able to read more someday. He then tells her that he will consider it as long as she talks to some gentleman. She agrees, but when she approaches to talk to the man, she discovers that he is sad because his horse died, which makes both of them laugh. Meanwhile, Eloise and Cressida talk about Penelope. Eloise then tells her about Colin and his plan to help the girl find a husband, which some other girls in society overhear discreetly. Benedict, for his part, tries to escape from the young eligible ladies, especially from one who seems to have been deluded after sharing a dance with him. Meanwhile, Francesca tries to find someone who shares her taste for music, although with little success. Violet, watching the scene from afar, tells her concern to Lady Danbury, who devises a plan for Queen Charlotte to see Francesca playing the piano and name her the Diamond of the Season. In another room, Portia intercepts her daughters, demanding to know if they are frequently trying to get pregnant. And while Philippa tells her that she tries, although she does not enjoy it, Portia discovers that Prudence has no idea how a baby is conceived. Penelope, for her part, has a pleasant conversation with a nice gentleman which pleases Colin, but everything gets twisted when they realize that everyone at the party seems to have found out about the agreement they both share. Embarrassed, Penelope flees the place crying, and Colin reproaches Eloise for having told her secret to Cressida. That night, Penelope writes a new publication of Lady Whistledown where she speaks ill of herself about what happened. Eloise, after reading the gossip sheet, reproaches Cressida, believing that it was she who divulged her secret, but she assures her that she was not, and explains how she saw the other girls talking about it, then tells her that before judging her, she should look in a mirror. At the Featherington house, Portia reproaches Penelope about her agreement with Colin, telling her that she thought that all that wardrobe change was just for fun, since after 3 years single in society, she could not pretend to find a husband. The next night, Colin visits her at her house to make sure she is okay after the publication of Lady Whistledown. Penelope, desperate to see her last hopes vanish, and in a burst of courage, asks him to kiss her, assuring him that it would mean nothing, but that she wanted to do it because she was afraid of dying and that no one had ever kissed her. He tries to refuse, assuring her that she is not going to die, but she insists desperately, so he gives in and kisses her. That night, Colin dreams that he visits Penelope again and confesses to her that he has not been able to stop thinking about her after kissing her. She tells him that she feels the same, and he kisses her passionately until he wakes up, completely confused. After several days absent from society, Penelope receives an unexpected visit. Eloise comes to her house to apologize for having spread the rumor about her deal with Colin, and when Penelope invites her to stay, she refuses and leaves the place. Later, Colin and Penelope meet in the park while she takes a walk. There, she tells him that they cannot continue with the lessons, nor should they be seen in public, as it is not convenient for her family nor for his, although he is now more inclined to stay close. That night, Penelope attends a ball where she tries to strike up a conversation with 2 gentlemen who reject her, mocking her. However, she is intercepted by Lord Devlin, with whom she manages to strike up a conversation naturally. The next day, Cressida tells Eloise that she has chosen who will be her future husband, being that Lord Devlin. What Eloise does not know is that this sudden interest is due to the pressure of her mother to find a husband, who in turn was being pressured by the girl's father. Everyone gathers at an exhibition fair about balloons, and there, Penelope tells Colin about her progress with Lord Devlin. He, upset by his recent dreams, is mesmerized by her lips when he sees her savoring her fingers. Minutes later, Penelope sees Lord Devlin talking with Eloise and Cressida and is forced to join the conversation at the man's request. A competition then begins between the two for Devlin's attention, and Penelope clumsily starts lying about her interests, pretending that she likes nature, although it is not so. Benedict, for his part, meets a young widow for whom he feels immediately attracted. Meanwhile, Queen Charlotte, in an effort to marry her diamond, introduces Francesca to a renowned marquis. She greets him kindly, although she is not captivated by his presence. That night, as they enter a party, Violet meets an unknown gentleman who captures her attention. Later, she discovers that this is Lady Danbury's brother, who does not seem happy with his presence. Meanwhile, Penelope sees how Cressida captures Lord Devlin's attention, so when she sees him alone, she approaches him and apologizes for having pretended to be interested in things that did not interest her, just to impress him. He accepts her apologies and tells her that he is actually looking for an authentic woman who does not share his same tastes. Francesca, for her part, discovers that her new suitor wants to have 8 children, which she does not find appealing since being the most reserved of her family. She has found it a challenge to coexist with them. Overwhelmed, she decides to step out into the garden for some fresh air. There, she meets a young lord with whom she shares a few moments of silence and tranquility, which captures her attention without him saying a single word. Meanwhile, Colin, seeing Penelope talking with Lord Devlin, asks his mother if friendship can turn into love, to which she responds that it's difficult because it must be mutual. She recounts how her relationship with his father started similarly and became something more when he had the courage to ask if she felt the same. However, when she sees how her son looks at Penelope, she realizes what is happening but chooses to say nothing. Colin then gathers his courage and approaches Penelope, determined to express his feelings, but he is interrupted by Lord Devlin, who claims a dance with her. The next day, Lord Devlin visits Penelope at her house, bringing her a plant as a gift. However, the visit is interrupted by Portia, who tells Devlin that Penelope spends most of her time sitting by the window. He asks why she enjoys being there so much, and she responds that she simply likes the view but has grown tired of it. Meanwhile, Benedict enjoys a passionate liaison with the widow, Lady Tilly Arnold. Back at the Bridgerton residence, Francesca receives John Kilmartin's visit, intended for courtship. However, the visit is interrupted by the Marquis, who also aims to court her, prompting John to leave the scene. Meanwhile, Penelope attends a book exhibition where she encounters Lord Devlin. He hints that he will propose to her through Portia and asks her indirectly if she would accept him, a question she dodges upon noticing Colin nearby. That night, Colin heads to a brothel seeking the company of two women but fails to concentrate, apparently unable to stop thinking about Penelope. The following day, while walking, Francesca meets John again. They attempt to converse about a street musician playing the violin, but John abruptly ends the conversation and departs. At the Cowper residence, Cressida receives Eloise's visit, which appears concerned. However, she is swiftly dismissed by Lord Cowper, who forbids his daughter from associating with Eloise. The next day, Lord Devlin visits the Featherington residence and formally requests Penelope's hand from Portia, who readily agrees. She then informs Penelope that he will propose at the ball that evening, although she appears unconvinced about accepting. At the Bridgerton home, Violet awaits Colin to accompany her to the ball, but he declares he won't attend. She informs him of Lord Devlin's intentions toward Penelope, and he remains silent, steadfast in his decision not to go. At the ball, Violet meets Lord Anderson, who reveals his intentions to find a wife, surprising her. After finishing a dance with the Marquis, Francesca is approached by John, who apologizes for his previous abrupt departure and presents her with a mysterious gift. Upon opening it and discovering it contains musical scores, she smiles. She asks her mother to leave the place, leaving the Marquis standing and bidding John Kilmartin farewell with a smile. On the other side of the room, Prudence and Philippa discuss their suspicions about being pregnant. Finally, Colin decides to attend the ball, determined to prevent Penelope from accepting Lord Devlin's proposal. Penelope, in conversation with Lord Devlin, questions whether it's possible they could ever fall in love. He honestly replies that his career takes up so much of his heart that it would be difficult to make room for more. Meanwhile, Cressida apologizes to Eloise for her father's harsh words, but as they converse, she is shocked to see Colin enter the room decisively and interrupt Penelope's dance with Lord Devlin. Seizing the moment, Cressida resumes dancing with Devlin. Penelope confronts Colin for his interruption, and he explains that she cannot marry Lord Devlin because he travels extensively, and she would be alone much of the time. She acknowledges this, but is resigned to accept his proposal. Across the dance floor, Cressida informs Lord Devlin about Penelope's long acquaintance with Colin since the Bridgertons moved across from the Featheringtons. Devlin then understands why Penelope often gazes out the window. He bids farewell to Cressida and leaves, but Penelope follows him to apologize for the interruption. He inquires why she often looks out the window, and without waiting for an answer, he surmises that something is going on between her and Colin. Penelope assures him that Colin harbors no feelings for her. Devlin then ironically asks if she wishes Colin were more than a friend, a question she leaves unanswered. Devlin concludes that because of his frequent absences, he needs a partner whose affections are not compromised, so he hopes she finds what she's looking for and departs. Distraught, Penelope rides home in her carriage. Colin tries to follow, and without any carriages in sight, he runs after hers. Catching up, he joins her in the carriage and asks if Lord Devlin proposed. Seeing her distressed, he explains he's just concerned for her and doesn't think Devlin is right for her. She reveals that Devlin didn't propose, but instead rejected her, believing Colin has feelings for her, which she deems absurd. She then asks him to be quiet and leave her alone. Desperate, Colin admits he cannot do that and confesses his feelings for her. He shares that he's spent too long trying to be what others expect, but recently, his feelings for her have overwhelmed him. He hasn't stopped thinking about their kiss and often dreams of her, preferring to sleep because it's only then that he can see her. This has become a torturous feeling he can't abandon. Penelope asks him not to lie, and he insists it's true. She tells him they are friends, suggesting more is impossible. He steps back, disappointed, apologizing for his outburst, but she urges him to come back, confessing her desire for them to be more than friends. Desperate, he approaches, and they share a passionate kiss, touching intensely until the carriage stops right in front of his house. They laugh nervously, aware that they might have been seen. Colin tenderly adjusts her hair and dress sleeve, then steps out of the carriage and offers her a hand to help her down. Penelope looks at him, confused, and then he poses the question. And well, friends, that wraps up our summary of the first part of Bridgerton Season 3. If you enjoyed this video, the best way to support me is by giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. See you in the next video.